Let's start with Northern Journey. Northern Journey's awesome. It's a first-person, uh, not really platformer, not really adventure game. It's a lot of different things. It's kind of got a little bit of FPS stuff with some interesting weapons. It's very Norwegian, and I was really, really charmed by this. It's just got a lot of interesting stuff going on, and it feels like an older game. Some of it reminded me of like Alone in the Dark, like the original Alone in the Dark games, where like the crude graphics lent a little more tension to stuff than really high quality, high definition, high visibility stuff would. But it also had this really great sense of scale that I don't think has been done in anything like it, especially vertical scale. And I think a big part of that was that the developer outright said he made it on a real potato of a computer. So in order to test it, it had to be extremely highly optimized. The engine, at least. Like, he stripped out all of the extra effects and got it running really super fast, which meant he could make the levels enormous. And it is great. I really love it. There's a lot of, like, annoying bits, but it holds up pretty well. Play this song. I'm not gonna play anything from someone else's SoundCloud because I was gonna put this up on YouTube. So I'm just doing license-free Christmas music as background. I'm not like putting ads on it or anything. I just don't want it to get muted. Anyway, yeah, Northern Journey, a great, authentic feeling game. Even if it is maybe a little tongue-in-cheek, I'm not entirely sure because the guy that made it is too Norwegian for me to tell how sincere he is. But he seems genuinely insane, which fits the game. Yeah, there's a lot of really great, memorable stuff in this. Great visuals. And again, like I said, the sense of scale in it is incredible. Plus, I like that you move pretty fast in general. So it makes the giant levels not feel like tedious. Although some of the platforming's a little wonky, but never terrible. The boss fights are pretty annoying, but in that old-fashioned way, where they're kind of broken and you have to break them in retaliation, which is something I'm pretty nostalgic for. Do you review small Newgrounds games? Not really. Usually a game's gotta at least be more than like one sitting for me to like write it up. It needs to be something that I like sit down and finish. I mean, if one was good enough, I would definitely write it up and talk about it. The problem is there's not that much going on as far as I'm aware of. Madness Project Nexus? No, but I did see it. I might. Have you played it? What's up, why not? I only played the demo. I still have a ton of demos from that Sonic event that I haven't gotten around to. I keep meaning to, but I keep forgetting about it. Because I actually installed a couple of them even. I downloaded a bunch, but I actually installed a couple of them. I just never got around to playing through them. I think some of them I was thinking about streaming, because they looked really fun. But obviously I haven't had a whole lot of time. Scratch and Melody? No, Scratch and Melody was one of the ones that you really recommended that I was going to try and stream. I think I have Dancing Divas too. Downloaded anyway, the demo for it. Yeah. Did you play Freedom Planet 2? Guy has kinks and he puts them in the game. Yeah, She's really into that kind of stuff where it's like obviously a guy's a freak and he makes the game all about being that specific kind of freak. I don't mind it. Sometimes it's really cool, but sometimes it feels kind of fake. I'm not saying anything about Dancing Divas because I haven't played it yet, but I'm just talking about in general. What did you think of Freedom Planet 2? Not too bad so far, but I haven't touched it after the first part. Yeah, I got a Steam Deck, so I've been meaning to hang out with my Steam Deck on the couch and play through Sonic Mania some more. But I was thinking of picking that up too, because I thought that would be a fun Steam Deck game. No, I have. It's just there's like 8 characters in the game, and I want to play through it some more because it's been a while. And I figured the Steam Deck would be a great place to replay it. I actually replayed some of it already on it, and it's a lot of fun. Yeah, one of the things I really love about Northern Journey is the sling weapon. It's just such an interesting weapon. It actually feels like you're using a sling, which is extremely rare in games that feature slings. A lot of games handle slings as just like bows but weaker, when they're a totally different thing. Yeah, Northern Journey is great. I don't really have a whole lot to say about it, because I don't want to spoil a lot, partially. But also, there's not that many people that would be that into it. I think it's probably similar to Infra in a sense, where Infra's like the kind of game She's super into. My game this time next year. Hey, buddy. Hey, buddy. You're not going all Silk Song on me, are you? We're not gonna be waiting a couple years while you go, oh, this year, for sure. Anyway, I think it's similar to Infra. Infra's like a game that She's thinks is really sick, and very few other people I think are actually that into it. Although a lot of people in my thread said they did. I'm not sure how authentic they were. And Northern Journey is similar for me, where I think this is really cool, but I'm pretty keenly aware that not many other people do. But I think it's better than Infra because there's a lot more actually going on, and there's a lot less stuff that feels unnecessary or out of place. I played through Yooka-Laylee, and I would say this is a lot more interesting than Yooka-Laylee. Black Baron MD's free, but this is way cooler than that. Let's look at Flashback. Flashback's kind of a classic, but it's also classically bad to play through. I think this is better than Flashback. Let's look way up high. On Super Nintendo, no, this ranking, so I usually play the Genesis version because that's how I initially played it, and so when I go back to it, I like to play the Genesis version. I have played the Super Nintendo version, but just, you know, that's how you treat games that you've played as a kid. But this was actually the PC. No, I don't know Noyemi. Anyway, this was actually the more recent PC port of the Genesis and SNES versions. That was free on GOG at some point, and I picked it up and checked out that port, and it's a pretty bad port. Like, it runs fine, but there's a lot of things that are just kind of weirdly broken. Like, they broke the timer for the escape sequence at the end, so you don't actually need to rush at all. What's up, TT? I'm just doing Northern Journey here. Signalis, I think, has got a better story, as much as me and Sheslop complained about the story not making sense. I like the story in Signalis. Northern Journey has kind of a silly nonsense story. Oh no. Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I usually don't get too personally invested in stuff with developers. So honestly, if you don't want to, like, prop him up or prop them up, just don't mention it, or mention it to me in private, and if I, like, enjoy the game, I'll enjoy the game on its own merits, and not say, like, the developer's awesome. Because there are a lot of people who make things that are cool, but they're also, like, assholes or pieces of shit. Do that soon in January. That'll be cool. It's always good to have something you're like looking forward to. Pizza Tower? I've not heard of that. You're like on a whole other level of niche from me. Cabbage. Yeah, it's tough to put Northern Journey this high up because these are all like games that are real games. And I don't want to say Northern Journey is not a real game, but it's definitely like a weird one-man passion project that I think is a harder sell for a lot of people. Wario Land, but with a psycho art style. That does sound cool. I really love the Wario Land games. Yeah, but on the other hand, apparently Sakuna was a really small team too, and that was clearly a big deal. Wonderful 101 Remastered has its irritations, and it's got bad pacing. But it's got a lot of charm, and I think it's an easier sell to people than Northern Journey. However, Sifu, I'm gonna put it right above Sifu, because I think Northern Journey might really blow someone's socks off if they weren't expecting it, and they give it a shot, or it'll at least like provoke or cause some like emotional or thought process that I don't think Sifu can really pull off. Sifu's mostly just like a challenging and sometimes satisfying, sometimes irritating beat 'em up that didn't have the, how should I put it, the self-assurance to, or confidence to stand on its own as just a beat 'em up. And so they tried to make it also like a roguelite, also like a thing where you get progressive upgrades, and all that shit just kind of detracts from the actual game. So I'm putting Northern Journey right above that. A lot of good games this year. I know a lot of people don't think so, but... And also, a lot of these aren't from this year. But it was a good year for me. So TT, did you want to talk about Soldiers now? And if you did you want to do it in like Discord or something? I know you mentioned that. Or are you just content to chill tonight? I played through One Shot recently. Yeah, me and Sheeslop talk about One Shot a lot because I streamed through my playthrough of it a few years back. And I don't really like One Shot. The art's pretty good. And most of the writing's okay. Okay. Anyway, yeah, I really don't like that style of meta commentary or meta interaction with the player. I absolutely hate it. It's like an adventure game that they tried to fill out, or like the fluff that they added to try and make it longer is shit like it putting files in your documents, or it looking at your users, your Windows users thing, to see what your real name is. I don't like that aspect of Undertale or any Earthbound-like stuff. Well, there's a level of it that is fine. Psycho Mantis is like the perfect example, because it doesn't require you to like format your PS2, your PlayStation's memory card. Okay, so Psycho Mantis looks at your saves and goes, oh, I know what games you're playing, and that, you know, fits in with his character. And it's also sort of like a fourth wall breaking thing, along with, like, you know, the codec code on the back of the box and stuff like that. But a lot of developers see that kind of thing and go, oh, fourth wall breaking, that's a cool gimmick that I can use. And they just kind of, they aren't creative with it, and it's usually pretty annoying. That was one thing that I thought Midnight Protocol did really well. You def have to be creative, yeah. So I'm gonna move on to Midnight Protocol now that I'm thinking of that, because I don't think anyone else is gonna want to talk about that. Somebody recommended it to me. I can't remember who. Oh, actually I do. It was SAP. S-A-P. Midnight Protocol was one of the games that got recommended to me in my recommendation streams by SAP. And I saw it and I was like, oh, that actually looks pretty interesting. And I'm really glad that I bit the bullet on it, because it wound up being really interesting. A lot more interesting than I thought it would be. So it's basically just a hacking game, and the entire interface is you typing out commands. You played a couple hours of this? Yeah, it's cool. It's definitely got some flaws with regards to the balance and the viable options, I feel. Like, I just never felt like I was completely free to pick a loadout and play around with the loadout, because at least at the difficulty I was playing at, it always felt like I was like just barely squeezing by. I don't think I was making like huge mistakes either. And since it's turn-based, it wasn't like I was wasting a lot of time or being slow or anything. I was maybe being a little greedy, like trying to loot a lot of the financial nodes, which wound up not being a huge deal anyway, because you end up getting a decent amount of money. And so maybe if I had been a little looser with the optional objectives, I could have loosened up my loadout a bit to try and do everything in a mission, get gray hat points or whatever. Yeah, at least for like the first half of the game, credits are pretty tight if you want to get new stuff to play with. And unlocking things with the, white and black and gray hat stats is pretty exciting. Definitely the best thing. I don't want to ruin too much of it, since you haven't gotten too far into it, but the best thing in this game, in my opinion, is the sysops, the other system operators that you wind up fighting, and they turn into like these cool emergent boss fights where they have their own loadouts of programs that they can run. I assume you haven't played Sonic Frontiers. No, it's cool looking, but it's just too much for an open world game right now. And it all, to be frank, it also looks really janky, which is kind of a selling point for a Sonic game, for a 3D Sonic game, because that's often pretty fun, but it still looks like it's in a pretty rough shape right now. But I'll probably get it eventually, maybe this year. Yeah, Midnight Protocol, really sick. The second best thing about this game is the soundtrack. I really like how the game, when you enter a server, it starts out pretty calm and kind of like, a little bit of like 90s cyberpunk sort of background music. And then as things start to ramp up in the missions, it gets more and more intense until it's just like sirens blaring and this like thumping beat, and you're like actually starting to sweat through your fingerless gloves as you type out the commands. One thing that's kind of cool is they added a real-time mode where the trace, actually you're seeing it right now, the trace is running up as the timer goes, which I thought was really cool, but I didn't play all the way through in that mode. It was my second playthrough, because they like openly admitted they had no clue how to balance it. So it was all just kind of arbitrarily like chosen timers and stuff like that. And so there were some spots where it was like pretty frustrating or like completely trivial, just because you can bounce around a server so quickly if you've got a decent WPM. they call it Open Zone. I know what they call it, but Kojima called Death Stranding a Strand type game instead of a hiking simulator or walking simulator. So I'm gonna take Sonic Team's calling it Open Zone game with a grain of salt. Just a grain. So yeah, Midnight Protocol. Also, Midnight Protocol has a story that is very suited for that exact sort of metagame, fourth wall breaking thing that I talked about hating in One Shot. Except it does it exactly, precisely, correctly, where, like at a certain point, you know, the whole point of the game is you're playing it through this console, and your system gets compromised and hacked, but you don't have to go out and fuck with files on your actual hard drive to do anything. It resolves itself in-game, which is nice. When it started happening, I was like, oh no, here they go. Like, they can't help themselves. But then it resolved itself, and I was like, oh, thank God, they're not idiots. Now, I don't like putting things back to back, usually, because it feels lazy. I'm not sure how much I like it more than Northern Journey. Like, would I recommend this over Wonderful 101? Maybe, like, to a certain person. But I don't know if I would in general. But on the other hand, I did start a second playthrough of it to try out a different mode. I did not do that with Wonderful 101, although I was kind of tempted to. The bad ranking system for Wonderful 101 really spoiled that for me, so I didn't even really attempt it. So I think it will go above that. Sakuna. I think Sakuna's got more bugginess, but it's also got a little bit more charm. I don't know. I found a lot of Midnight Protocol to be pretty charming, actually. There's one little detail that I really like. Obviously, all the conversations take place with you typing out like emails and stuff, and the way the game does that is, it opens the box, and then you just sort of hit keys on your own keyboard randomly if you want, and it progressively types out the message that your character is typing out. And every once in a while they'll word something weird, or they'll make like an error, or they'll reveal something they don't mean to reveal to the person they're emailing or texting to, and they'll backspace, they'll delete that out and rewrite it. And it doesn't happen a lot, it happens just enough to feel pretty realistic, which I thought was a really I thought that was really well done. That is cool, yeah. There's some other stuff that I really liked, like stylistic decisions and just interesting parts of the story that I don't want to get into, especially since TT's here and is currently playing it. But I think it boosts it just over Sakuna for me. It's not a game that everyone's going to be super into, but I think it's really, really cool. And I was super glad that I picked it up and that Sap recommended it to me. Like, that was the perfect example of why I did the recommendation stream last year, and why I'll probably do one this year. Monster Hunter Rise probably next. Let's just go down the line here. So Monster Hunter is a series that's been around for a long time, and I've been like dimly aware of it, but I never got into it. Because I kind of thought it was more JRPG-ish than it actually is. I thought it was kind of like Dragon's Dogma for Japanese people, which isn't really fair to either thing. But that was just my impression of it for the longest time. And it's like super cartoony, pretty over the top. And then, obviously when Monster Hunter World came out, it kind of got a bigger audience. Because Monster Hunter World was like built up to be this big, spectacular version of Monster Hunter that had always been sort of a niche mobile gaming thing. Not mobile gaming as in phone gaming, but like PSPs and stuff. And Carwash got really into Monster Hunter World, and he got into it enough that he started obsessing over the whole series. And at some point I was like bemoaning to him as usual that I really missed having oh, there goes TT's up. Anyway, I was complaining that I really missed the low-level stuff in Vindictus, which is a Korean MMO free-to-play that I used to play a lot. And Carwash was like, oh, you know what? All the things that you liked about that, I think you would like about Monster Hunter. And I didn't understand. I picked up World and started playing it and almost completely bounced off of it. I just felt like I couldn't like do damage to the bosses. It felt like every boss was like a raid boss in an MMO that I was trying to solo. I was like, oh, this must be intended for like co-op with, a bunch of people and you're all like spamming your ults or whatever. And then I managed to push through and it finally clicked. Monster Hunter is like a really bizarre action game with a deliberateness that's extremely rare, I feel like, in most games. And, when you're watching people play it, especially people who are good at it, it looks like you're just like bouncing all around and doing all kinds of crazy shit. But the truth about Monster Hunter is that it's really slow and deliberate. Everything that you do is pretty stiff. And the whole point is knowing your equipment and your moveset so well, and knowing the monster's abilities and movesets so well that you can execute extremely stiff telegraphed moves and just like master the environment and the fight to a level that I don't think I've experienced in anything other than Vindictus. So, like, whatever you think about Carwash and his taste in games, he was dead on with that, I feel like. So I wound up getting really into Monster Hunter World, and that was entirely solo. I never co-opted that game. But, so I was pretty excited for this. I didn't have a Switch when it initially came out. So I was like, I'll wait until it comes out on PC. It'll be better then anyway. And this adds a lot of interesting things to the dynamic. It's got the wire bugs, so you can kind of zip line around. It's got the monster riding thing, where you can stun a monster and ride it around and go kind of like rampage into other monsters. It's all a lot of fun. You can ride around on your dog. That's a lot of fun. It's just a little more frivolous in general than I felt like World was. Where even though like I was still able to get through all of the content and solo like all of the actual fights. I don't know. It just felt like it was a return to more of a PSP level experience in a lot of ways, which, to be fair, was developed, I think, primarily for the Switch, so that makes sense. But I wasn't as crazy about it as I was World, and I still haven't gone back to it even with the new DLC, which, as with most Monster Hunter things, adds a whole like the final level of the game. I only played World, but the game part seemed cool, but I couldn't deal with the insane time to kill monsters. So, well, two things. One, the time to kill isn't honestly that insane. It's that the entire outing to go kill a monster is the whole thing. So aside from like some of the gimmick stuff where you're like going to get an egg to unlock a certain outfit or something, you really aren't like wasting a lot of time when you go out to hunt a monster. And so yeah, it takes like 20 minutes to kill a monster if you're doing okay. Obviously, if it's really tough, it might take a whole hour, but it's really not supposed to. And so I feel like people bounce off of it because they have this whole aversion to the idea of, oh, the monster takes 20 minutes to kill, or 30 minutes to kill, or maybe an hour to kill. But they're okay with a game where it takes 15 minutes to get through a stage and then 5 minutes to kill the boss, or something like that. And I don't think that's really fair to Monster Hunter, because Monster Hunter is all about the boss fights, like almost exclusively. And I think it does it well enough if you're into it, that just going, oh, it takes too long. It is definitely not like a game where you have like bite-size content, but most games aren't, honestly. And as far as having to farm them for drops, you don't need to make everything that's available in the game. And even when you do really need a set for a like a specific build, unless you're talking like super in-game stuff, it's maybe one additional kill after the first time you encounter it, usually. Because honestly, that's one of the kind of irritating things about the armor system in at least the games that I've played. You really don't ever need more than like one or two pieces from a specific monster, at least playing through the game. How about Shredder's Revenge? You play that? No, I haven't. I'm not that into arcadey beat 'em ups, like actual arcade style beat 'em ups. I think if I was gonna play one, like sit down and try and like get really good at them, I'd probably try and do the Dungeons and Dragons ones, because those are the most interesting to me. Yeah, Monster Hunter Rise is pretty good. At least speaking as a Monster Hunter novice. And I liked how a lot more of the weapons feel viable. A lot of people complain that Insect Glaive, which is what I wound up maining in this playthrough, uh, got the short end of the stick. But the reason they said that was Insect Glaive's main gimmick in all the other games that it's been in is like way higher mobility than anything else, where you just flip around. And with the wire bugs, you know, now everyone can flip around to some extent. But that's not fair at all, because the Insect Glaive, you can absolutely go crazy, and with the wire bug moves for it, like you really are just like bouncing all over like a ping pong ball in a dryer. Like, I'm going nuts here. That was, I think, the final boss of the content that I played through. The rocket ship dragon. So yeah, I like Monster Hunter Rise. I think most people who have any feelings at all about Monster Hunter have already played it. I'm probably like on the low end of the scale as far as people who care about Monster Hunter, honestly, but I like it a decent amount. Not enough to get the DLC yet, but I'll get that on my own time. That is one nice thing about not caring about co-op, is that I get to play these games whenever I want. I don't have to worry about, like, oh, my friends will have already played it, because none of my friends play it. Well, I'm sure some of my friends play it. Would you say World or Rise is a better intro? That's a tough one, because Rise is... I'm struggling to find a better word for it than frivolous, but I think Rise is easier to pick up. Like, it's a little less overwhelming initially. But it's also a lot more focused on multiplayer, because one of the things that I didn't mention is the rampages, which are a tower defense minigame that they added that you almost have to do in multiplayer, which is really annoying. You can solo all of the non-rampage content pretty easily, at least if you bother to like attempt to get good at the combat. I would say if you're willing to put up with a little bit of like feeling in over your head initially, World is probably a better one to pick up as your first game, especially if you intend to solo it, because even though you won't be able to solo a lot of the super end game stuff, as far as playing through the game, I think World was a lot more fun. The areas are a lot bigger and more interesting to explore. Rise, all the maps are basically just like big squares or like a bunch of big rooms with hallways connecting them, and you can like jump over all the walls anyway. So there's not really like any sense that you're learning how to move around a big environment. You just kind of beeline towards where the monster is. And that gets amplified too with the dog that you can ride, which makes you just go super fast. And you can like drink potions and sharpen your weapons while running. I would definitely put World above Rise, just as far as ranking it as a game. I think the art direction is probably pretty subjective. I think a lot of people like the kind of cartoony style, and especially the sort of Japanese look of Rise. I really liked World for the most part. There were some things that looked really bad in World, but because it was going for the kind of photorealistic, which is a silly thing to think about in terms of a Monster Hunter game, but I think it worked pretty well in Rise, or in World. The story in both is absolutely insane. But again, I like the characters in World better, especially Sirius Handler. I'm definitely gonna put it above Sifu and below Northern Journey. Above Sifu, because this is a lot more fun and nicer to look at than Sifu. It makes a similar level of flaws, but Sifu's just got less game to it, honestly. So yeah, seems a little arbitrary, but I don't really want to agonize over where to place Rise. Let's move on. Returnal. This was, I think, my brother's game of the year. Returnal is a roguelite, period. like it actually is a an action roguelite. And honestly, it's not too bad. I would not say pick up a PS5 for this, but if you have a PS5, like Demon's Souls Remaster, I think you probably should get this. Or rather, that's what I would have said before they announced that they were making a PC port of it. I get the sense that the PC port will probably be... Yeah, I was just getting to that. The PC port will probably be a little more stable. It might get some bug fixes. And it'll probably look at least as good, if not potentially better. A lot of these clips are going to be of bugs, just because that's what I happen to clip. It's tough to remember to clip stuff when you're like in the middle of a shootout. It's pretty interesting. It's got some really good gun feel, I think. The enemy design is pretty bland, but the game does a lot of really nice, thoughtful things as far as like visual indicators for things. So despite it being like procedurally generated level layouts, everything feels, for the most part, like it was actually designed. Like the actual rooms that are laid out in a random order, they don't feel like just completely pointless garbage that got thrown together in a minute. A lot of them feel like actually thought out arenas. There's like places where you can grapple up to higher points and move around a lot. I really like the malignancy stuff, where some of the things that you pick up will kind of curse you and give you like a big like debuff, and then you have like a certain request that you can fulfill in order to clear it. This is going to be awkward in the Steam version because it's a plot point at some point that you zoom out and you're a kid playing the game on a PS5. I wonder I wonder if they'll change that to a Steam Deck. So especially with the update that added the infinite like the endless run mode, which is called the Tower. It reminds me a lot of the Vampire Survivors and Nomad Survival style games where you jump in for like a pretty long run. And, you know, it gets pretty action heavy. Obviously pretty bullet hell too. Reminds me a little bit of the Nier games. With the bosses especially. Where you, there's like lots of bullet waves that come out and you kind of have to like weave through them in third person. It's pretty satisfying. I really like it. I liked it better than Sifu, honestly. But I don't think I liked it better than Monster Hunter. I think Monster Hunter is just a more compelling style of action, at least for me, than just like weaving through bullet patterns and shooting. Although Returnal does all of that really well. Monster Hunter Rise does that for its weapon system really well too. The story is completely gibberish. I don't like it at all. So, I don't really have much to say about it. It's kind of a, writers thinking they're great writers when they're video game writers for a reason. And they're video game writers for a studio no one's ever heard of. As opposed to, you know, making a living doing writing. Although I suppose they have made at least part of a living writing that game. Which is fair enough. Teardown. I'm surprised nobody volunteered for this one. Teardown is a puzzle game, primarily. And the puzzle is setting up a route for you to touch a bunch of things within 60 seconds. And that's most of the missions in most of the levels. You do basically the same thing. And that's honestly the weakest point of the game is the actual missions, which is a shame. Like, the actual objective you're supposed to do is usually more frustrating than it feels like it's worth. And it honestly doesn't take real advantage of the game's mechanics. Like, there's the whole destructibility thing, but the game, you know, wires every objective to an alarm box. Or at least like 80% of them to alarm boxes that just negate your ability to do anything clever with them. And it tries to let you do some clever things, but it always feels like that's the exception to the rule. Like, here I am driving a tank around. Unfortunately, the level that you get a tank in, the tank's kind of useless. They just added a new DLC, which I played some of it on stream, and it feels like more of the same, unfortunately. Although it did finally get me to download some mods, which are pretty fun. Yeah, this game, it just has trouble adding actual gameplay to a neat gimmick that they came up with and pulled off pretty well. Like, I don't know what I would do to fix this or make it more interesting, but I don't know. It needs something. I didn't hate it, but I found myself more frustrated with it than excited or blown away by it. It's supposed to be a comfy game. Well, it's not. Now, when you have like an assault chopper hanging out above you, sort of like Power Wash Sim. No, it's not at all like that. The whole point is setting up a route where you make this like super tense and narrow escape, and like almost every mission is like that. And usually it's pretty annoying and pretty samey, honestly. And the whole upgrade system's pretty useless too. Like, after a certain point, you get the rocket launcher, and then you just pay to max out the rocket launcher, and then you never have to use anything else to put holes in anything again. It's an interesting game, but it's not nearly as good as it as I think some people say it is. Which reminds me of Tokitori 2. I would probably put this... watching this whole shit show with the car makes me want to put below Tokitori 2, actually. Yeah, I think that's what I'm gonna do. Oh, no, I'm apparently putting it above. Actually. Yeah, Tokitori 2 never got like super frustrating or too touchy or twitchy, which this definitely can. Like all the missions where you have to set up this like chain of cars that you jump into and drive someplace, like it can just go so wrong just because the physics is kind of glitchy. And that's part of the charm, I guess, of the game. But I found it more irritating than charming for the most part. It really stops being like a puzzle game and starts being just kind of annoying. And I'm also really disappointed that there's no strain simulation whatsoever. So you can have an entire building supported by a single voxel of concrete or whatever. Didn't mean to do that. Okay, Rogue Legacy 2. Oh, Phallic, you didn't have anything that you wanted to talk about on here, did you? Did you want to talk about Scorn? I can't remember if you played Scorn. didn't play enough Death Stranding to talk about it. That's fine. I already ranked it with Sheeslop. We didn't put it super high because we decided to rank it based on it being the director's cut, which is a completely useless re-release of it. Would take place in the Corn Belt. Yeah. So Rogue Legacy 2 is Rogue Legacy again. That's not entirely fair. I liked it a lot better than the first game. Mostly just the combat and movement are way, way better. And honestly pretty good in general. I really liked the act of actually playing through it. The first game always felt pretty bland and samey when you would play through it. There's a lot more actual variety in Rogue Legacy 2. And it's also got like this whole system of New Game Plus. If you've ever played Hades and beaten it, you know about the heat system, where you basically add like debuffs to yourself for higher New Game Plus runs. Rogue Legacy 2 has a system like that, except it's a lot more grindy. You have to like progressively unlock all of the hard versions of all the bosses, for example, which was pretty irritating and what finally got me to stop playing it. But I played it a lot, and I was having a pretty good time for the most part with it. I'd say if you didn't hate the first game, you'd probably really enjoy this. And even if you did kind of hate it, because I kind of hated the first game, and I wound up enjoying this a decent amount. Again, this is another game that Car Wash kind of pressured me to pick up and check out. And again, he was pretty much spot on. Not as spot on as he was with Monster Hunter World, but it's got a lot of neat things going on. It does, however, still have the terrible roguelite progressive stat increases, which is always just like a huge bummer in a game like this. And like, unfortunately, that's like a central part of the gimmick. So I don't think they would ever completely excise that, although they really should. Like, that is probably the reason why I would put Dead Cells way above any other similar game. Just the fact that you never spend a meta currency on plus 2% attack damage or whatever for all future runs. This is a much better sequel than Jets and Guns 2, but it's also a sequel to a game I liked a lot less than Jets and Guns 1. But I definitely played a lot more than Jets and Guns 2. What about Night's End? Night's End is a pretty terrible Scoutfold game, honestly. I mean, it's not the worst. Well, it is the worst Scoutfold game, probably. But, yeah, I think this is still better than that. Probably better than Vampire Survivors. But Baba Is You, I think, is a classic, at least for people who are really into puzzle games. And this lets me put another game between Vampire Survivors and Nomad Survival. Nomad Survival, I think, is well, I don't have any legitimate reason for this, but I just don't feel that strongly about Rogue Legacy 2. As much as I played it, I kind of soured on it in the end. So let's drop it there. Calixtus might want to talk about Salt and Sacrifice, so I'll leave that. Maybe I'll do Procession to Cavalry. This one's pretty straightforward. It is just an adventure game, point-and-click adventure game, where all of the art and music is stolen from Renaissance or I'm not sure what the actual time period is, but it's like famous art. A lot of it is stuff that you'll kind of recognize even if you're not big into Renaissance art. Supremely not my vegetable. It's honestly pretty funny in a lot of points, and I wound up like actually genuinely laughing out loud at some of the things, which I wasn't expecting. I was expecting it to be kind of grating. It wound up winning me over in a lot of parts. Unfortunately, it is just an adventure game, and it has a lot of the flaws that a lot of adventure games have. You know, rubbing inventory items on things. A lot of kind of weird logic. Like this. That's probably one of the weaker puzzles. Some of the puzzles make a decent amount of sense. But apparently my clips thing is playing a bunch of PNGs that I accidentally included. So, sorry about that. Excavation of Hobbs Barrow? No, I haven't. My favorite adventure game of 2022. My favorite adventure game of 2022 is definitely Road Warden. I really recommend that one. Yeah, one of the gimmicks of this game is you have a sword, obviously, and your player character is a like open sociopath who loves killing, and that's like her entire motivation for going on the quest anyway, is it's the last legitimate murder she can do. And so you have a sword, and you can pull out the sword at any time, and you can attempt to use it on any NPC. That sounds really cool. Like, you can, and there are parts where you can just like murder somebody instead of doing their whole collection quest or whatever. Unfortunately, there's two big problems. One is that you can't do that with every NPC. In fact, it's only a couple very specific ones that she'll even actually do it to, which honestly goes against her character, I think. And it locks you into the bad ending, which kind of makes sense, that there's multiple endings, but I think basically killing just one person locks you into it because of the way everyone afterwards reacts to the fact that you've started murdering people. And there's like 3 endings. I can't remember what the third ending is, but or how you get it, but Yeah, I was a little disappointed with the fact that the ability to murder people felt kind of underbaked. Because I think you could have done some really interesting stuff with that as a mechanic, even if it was purely optional, or even if it locked you into a bad ending in a less linear way. But honestly, I think this goes pretty high. Despite it just being an adventure game, and a pretty short adventure game. I think it's similar to Wishlayer in that it's like a short experience that's kind of interesting, or in this case funny, but you're probably not going to replay it except to rush through and get a bad ending, and you're probably not going to think about it too much afterwards. Although this guy has 2 other adventure games on Steam that I went ahead and bought. I haven't played them yet, but I bought them just on the strength of this. I like the art a lot better than I liked Wishlayer's. Let's do milk inside a bag of milk inside a bag of milk. I think it's technically a bag of milk, but... Oops. Well, that didn't work. Milk inside a bag of milk inside a bag of milk is an visual novel, although it's really more of a visual pamphlet about being a Russian girl with depression, or maybe schizophrenia, or maybe both, or maybe just some other problem. Honestly, I didn't hate it. It was really short, had almost no choices, and had this kind of weird, almost too annoying art style. Like heavily digitized photos, obviously. Not EGA color, but kind of evoking that sort of lighting, really indistinct lighting. But it was only like $1, and I didn't get the sense that it was like trying to shake me down for empathy, which I know is a weird thing to bring up, but in context of this, let's call it a genre, I think that's a pretty high mark. I wouldn't really recommend it to anyone, because even though it's only $1, like, I didn't really get anything out of it, but I didn't hate it. Depression Quest likes? No, this feels like an actual thing that somebody sat down and made, not out of the kind of duty where you feel like you might get called out if you don't make something. And the sequel looks interesting, but it's not on sale as I know it has been in the past, so I'm gonna wait on it still. Try and pick it up for $2, because it might be 2 times the game. Actually, I think it's a lot more involved than this one. But I'm gonna put it between Fraga and Ghost Song. Oh, have you played either of them? Phallic? I think Sap bought them for me. Yeah, Sap recommended this one to me. Which I normally would have more to say about, but he also recommended Midnight Protocol, which I actually really enjoyed, and is a full game. So I'm willing to give him a pass on this, whatever this is. Yeah, the choices aren't. Basically, anytime you have a choice, you have the choice to be like mildly supportive or just kind of move the story along, or you have the other choices to insult the girl whose head you're inside. And if you insult her too much, I doubt you got the immediate game over after the first choice, because I think you have to like really make a couple negative comments about her. She basically, I don't think she threatens to commit suicide, but that's the impression. I get the feeling you don't have a lot to say about it. So I'm gonna put it right over Ghost Song. Because Ghost Song, it wasn't a miserable Metroidvania, but it was worse. It was a dull one. And this at least wasn't completely dull, at least for me. Stray. Stray's one I kind of hoped, I guess I did discuss it with Sheslop a lot. I really hated this. I hated almost everything about it. And really bugs me the amount of positive press that this is getting, especially now. Like with award season and people claiming that it's getting robbed by such terrible games as like Elden Ring and Call of Duty. This is not a game. It's barely interactive. In a way that I think even milk inside a bag of milk inside a bag of milk isn't as offensive but with, because Milk is an extremely short visual novel about someone with problems, whereas Stray is cloying and irritating and poorly made, has no respect for your time. It's lazy. It's buggy. And it is directly laser aimed at the sort of woman you should get out of your life. The puzzles are barely puzzles. The platforming is not at all platforming. It's not what it pretends to be. And it's not worth playing through. Even if it was free, I would say this is way too poorly paced, way too poorly made, grating in a lot of ways. Now, I'm struggling to remember because I think I said at least one nice thing about it in my post, but I honestly can't remember it if I did. Obviously, the big selling point of this is that you're a cat and you do cat things. But you don't really do cat things. You do third-person puzzle game things, and you happen to have the model of a cat. The cat's not particularly well animated. The cat things, the cute cat things that you do are all tied strictly to context prompts that are placed kind of arbitrarily around the game. Show me that sweet Tink Sorg hentai. Well, Phallic, I'm not going to do that because I'm currently recording and I might have to put this up on YouTube if somebody wants to see it. And I don't want to do any editing. So I'll show you the sweet Tink Sorg hentai once I hit the pause recording button after this. And then we can all hoot and holler at the pregnant nun or whatever he's drawn today. Sorry if that seems like a lame excuse, but that's also the reason why I'm playing license-free Christmas music in the background. So yeah, Stray. As much as I hate what they did to Metroid, it's still technically a competent Metroid game. It's just very rote and depressing. And Aperture Desk Job is only going to be a problem for you if you're someone stupid or rich enough to own a Steam Deck. Which, to be fair, I think it's not a terrible piece of hardware. I think it's just excessive in a lot of ways. So if you do have a lot of money burning a hole in your pocket, it's probably not a terrible replacement for like a gaming laptop if you travel a lot, I would say. And if you're, if you're of that caliber of gamer, you're probably not even going to download Aperture Desk Job. Aperture Desk Job, as much as it wastes your time, it's like 10 times as long as a button check app would need to be. It didn't feel like as much of a waste of time as Stray. So as funny as it would be to put it right above Infra, I would absolutely play through all of these games. Infra, Frog Gun, Milk, Inside a Bag of Milk, Inside a Bag of Milk, Ghost Song, Crypt Stalker, Vomitorium, Tunic, Flynn, Son of Crimson, Haiku the Robot, Transit Ruby, Metroid Dread, and Aperture Desk Job in one sitting rather than ever play Stray again. And I do mean that back to back in one sitting, like an ultra marathon of all of this shit. I would rather do that than play Stray. I think I can do one more and not leave myself too spread thin. as far as things to finish. I'll do Salt and Sacrifice. Well, no, I won't do Salt and Sacrifice. Probably Rollerdrome, because I think Calixtus might have something to say about Salt and Sacrifice tomorrow. But Rollerdrome, I think only one other guy posted about in my thread. Rollerdrome is Tony Hawk's with guns, and that's the good thing about it. It does it pretty well. I was shocked at how much fun it actually was. My brother actually picked it up initially, and I played it on his computer, and was like, oh shit, I actually kind of want to play through this on my own time. So I went and picked it up at release, and I wasn't disappointed. It was genuinely a lot of fun. It's not as good as an actual Tony Hawk's, obviously. There's a lot of reasons for that. It's just a little looser with the trick stuff, a lot looser with landing. You can't bail, but that's fair enough because you can get shot, so, which you can't do in can't happen to you in Tony Hawk's. At least any of the Tony Hawk's I played. I never played the Underground games, but yeah, genuinely a lot of fun. Pretty replayable. The one real downside is the side missions, the side objectives that you need to do to unlock more maps, are pretty arbitrary and kind of tedious sometimes. And the Out for Blood mode, which is like the New Game Plus of the game, is really brutal. I wasn't... Well, I'll put it this way, I haven't yet gotten through it. That's what you're seeing here, where you get the black suit, which looks sick. I really like the art style of it. I really like the way they handled the story stuff. I think was actually really well done. Basically, you just have these short first-person interludes where you walk around the locker room or some other location, and you're not forced to do anything in those. They have like incidental lore and backstory stuff like kind of scattered around them, but not a lot of it, and you can skip all of it if you don't give a shit. And your character isn't really a character, but that's perfect, because she's basically just a blank slate psychopath who's really good at rollerblade blood sport, and that's her entire character. You can make up in your head that she's, you know, an awesome boss bitch, or, you know, a terrorist, or whatever you want. She's not really anything, but that's fine. Again, it's not nearly as good as an actual Tony Hawk's, but it's good enough that the gimmick's interesting. It's a little similar in that regard to Hammer Fight. I'm honestly not sure how Hammer Fight made it that high. Hammer Fight's pretty irritating to play sometimes. I think the closest comparison point would be Sifu, and whereas Sifu takes all of those traits and kind of ruins them with too much bullshit, I feel like Rollerdrome nicely avoided that, and everything kind of additional to Rollerdrome is either something you can completely ignore or it's good. So it's definitely better than Sifu. Like Returnal, it's something that you can get into and kind of play constantly, even once you quote unquote beat it. But I liked Roller Drome. I liked Roller Drome's gameplay loop a lot better than Returnal's, even though I think Returnal's fine. I think it caps out at Northern Journey, though. Northern Journey is a really genuinely interesting game. It's not just a gimmick, although it is kind of gimmicky. But I definitely was a lot more interested in Northern Journey, playing through it, and I think a lot more people should give it a shot. I think people should give Roller Drome a shot too. I think some people kind of had an aversion to it initially and thought it would just be like either really dumb and hacky or just boring. And I don't think that's fair. I think it's genuinely pretty well put together and a lot of fun if you like this sort of thing. And I think I'll put it above Monster Hunter Rise too. I was just more consistently engaged with it than Monster Hunter Rise, and like I said with Sifu, Monster Hunter Rise added something totally unnecessary that really kind of spoils your fun in the rampages. And Roller Drome doesn't do that. So yeah, definitely check out Roller Drome. I might do Half-Life 2 VR real quick too, because I don't think anyone but me really had that much to say about it. Where is it? Yeah, this is coming close to me saying a VR headset, at least a cheap one, might be a worthwhile investment for somebody who's serious about playing games. It was a lot of fun to play through Half-Life 2, and I don't like Half-Life 2 that much. It's just a really good fit for VR, like a shockingly good fit. And the mod team did a really good job with it, I think. There's some tweaks. There's some stuff that just being in VR makes it a little more irritating, but not nearly as much as I thought there would be with it being in VR. There's still some physics glitches that are really irritating, but that's just Half-Life 2. That's the Source engine being annoying. And they really got lazy with the revolver reload animation, which is really stupid because that's one of the easiest things, one of the most obvious things to put into a VR game. Everyone loves flicking their wrist to reseat the cylinder. But aside from that, almost everything else is pretty well done. I even wound up really liking the regular SMG, which I always kind of hated in vanilla Half-Life 2, because it's the only gun with a reflex sight, which when you're actually aiming it, and not just hitting or holding right mouse button and putting the center of the screen on the enemy, it's actually important and feels pretty good. But again, it is just Half-Life 2. Half-Life 2 is not a great game. It's definitely one of the most overrated games of all time. But it's also not a terrible game. It's just pretty bad. I did really like it. Like with most VR games that are ports of quote-unquote real games, I did really like some of the bits where you get like up close and personal with some stuff that you don't normally see too closely. Like Eli Vance's goofy smile as he's reunited with turtleneck sweater. So yeah, you can see me using the reflex sight on the SMG there. It winds up being a lot more usable in VR than the Combine assault rifle, which is a nice inversion of how it is in the base game. Here's some of that trademark Source Engine platforming and puzzling, where you think, oh, I gotta get across this electrified water. I'd better place this conveniently available cardboard box here, or crate, wooden crate, and then it just immediately collapses and dumps you in the electrified water anyway. Great stuff, Valve. Yeah, the shotgun was awesome too. Shotguns are just good in VR. Same with bows. That is one downside, is the crossbow was completely garbage in this, both due to the way the scope worked, which was, it was way too distant. It was too high power of a scope to be usable in VR without any aim enhancement. And also reloading it was a huge pain in the ass. But they apparently patched both of those things after I finished the game, so I'm not sure how the crossbow is now, but I'm assuming it's still pretty bad. I did really love the change they made to the grenades, though, where you just get an arc indicator. Like, you can physically throw them if you want, but throwing grenades in VR is always terrible, and it's super, super bad throwing stuff in VR with a inside-out tracking headset, which is what I'm currently using. So I'm really glad they added the alternate throwing method for those, and I really hope that becomes a standard for VR games, because if not, and they continue primarily making inside-out tracking the standard, that's just going to be a nightmare for too many things, and they're never going to completely solve that. Like, just give me the arc indicator. So yeah, this being in VR definitely pushes it higher than Half-Life 2 would be, but not super high. See, Demon's Souls Remake's a good comparison point because you have to own a PS5 to play that, and you have to own a headset to play this. But I think a headset is, at this point, probably an easier sell than a PS5. And it'll get more and more useful as far as gaming goes in the future, whereas I think a PS5 will get less useful in the future. Not saying there isn't some killer app coming out for it someday, but probably not. And this is a better revisiting of a game than Death Stranding Director's Cut was, for sure. And it's technically free if you own Half-Life 2, which I assume most people do, even ones that absolutely loathe the game. Probably own it. I mean, if you have a Steam account, you probably picked it up for $1 at some point or something like that. So I think it's close enough to free, despite the hardware investment. I definitely had more fun with it than This Story Midnight. I'll be honest, I don't like ActRaiser that much. Jets and Guns 2. I've played Jets and Guns 2 a couple times now, and I think I'm pretty much done with it. I don't think they're ever going to revisit that. And I might actually play through Half-Life 2 VR again someday. Probably not anytime soon, but someday I might get the hankering to go through this again. And I'll probably have about as much fun with it. But it is just sort of a implementation of something in a game that was already made, which I think there should be more of for VR, for sure. I think that makes Wishlayer a little more unique. I definitely didn't outright enjoy myself with this near as much. Well, no, that's not true. I definitely hooted and hollered a few times at this. How does it feel compared to Night's End? Well, honestly, Night's End is only that high because I like Scoutfold as a series. Maybe I will put it below Wishlayer. Half-Life 2 does kind of drag after a while, so even when it is good, it's a bit too long. Yeah, I think I'll put it right below Wishlayer then. I really didn't play that much VR, at least to completion, this year. I played a lot of Into the Radius, but it's not even done yet, so I'm not gonna post about it in my thread. I'll post about it in the VR thread, though. Hopefully it'll be complete next year. So that's probably gonna go pretty high, at least for VR game. Well, I think that's pretty much it. I'm gonna go to bed. Hopefully tomorrow morning I can squeeze some comments, some commentary out of some people. And then we can start to wrap up trying to get done before the 1st, but we'll see. Well, thank you guys for watching, or primarily listening, and chiming in with your thoughts. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a good night.